Missiles rained down on the recently liberated city of Kherson as Russia stepped up its attacks across all of Ukraine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin meets select mothers of soldiers fighting on the battlefield in Ukraine as troops return home following a prisoner swap.
France takes a strong line against Italy at an EU Interior Ministers' extraordinary meeting in Brussels.
A barrage of missiles struck the recently liberated city of Kherson on Thursday, killing 4 people and injuring at least 10 others, according to the Ukrainian army. This latest attack marks an escalation of hostilities by Russian forces after they recently retreated from the southern city.
Almost every hour I receive reports of strikes by the occupiers at Kherson and other communities of the region. Such terror began immediately after the Russian army was forced to flee from the Kherson region. This is the revenge of those who lost. They do not know how to fight. The only thing they can still do is terrorize. Energy terror or artillery terror or missile terror. That's all that Russia has stooped down to under its current leaders.
Missiles rained down in the Kiev region as well. In Vyshgorod, a kindergarten and school were damaged in the Russian shelling. In the capital, 60% of the population remains without any power as winter sets in, and so do freezing temperatures. Russian forces have targeted the country's energy infrastructure, subjecting millions to emergency blackouts. These satellite images taken by NASA show how much of the country has been affected by power cuts before and after the invasion. Hospitals like this one in Kramatorsk have been forced to rely on generators to keep the lights on as they treat soldiers and civilians.
Russian officials and occupation authorities continue their attempts to consolidate administrative control of occupied and annexed areas and forcibly integrate Ukrainian civilians into Russian socio-cultural, economic, military and governance systems. The Institute for the Study of War says Russian occupation officials and forces continued also to intensify filtration measures in Russian-occupied territories of Ukraine. And this is how Russia's filtration process in Ukraine operates. First, individuals are detained and taken to filtration waypoints or stopped at filtration checkpoints where they're evaluated for their perceived threat. Now, those deemed most threatening are probably detained and imprisoned in eastern Ukraine or Russia. Those deemed less threatening but still hostile are probably forcibly deported to Russia. Those deemed non-threatening are probably either issued documentation and permitted to remain in Ukraine or forcibly deported to Russia. Now, many of those deported are children. The Institute for the Study of War says Russian officials continue efforts to deport children from occupied areas of Ukraine to Russia. Russian-installed authorities in the so-called Luhansk People's Republic claim they sent Ukrainian children from here to the region of Krasnodar. According to Ukraine's National Information Bureau, almost 11,500 children have been deported. Now, this is based on calls from parents who are looking for their children. As the Institute for the Study of War previously stated, prominent Russian mill bloggers began circulating a documentary series clearly depicting Ukrainian children being adopted into Russian families. Now, this documentary campaign is likely intended to propagate informational conditions to normalize the forced assimilation of Ukrainian children into Russian families and Russian society.
Your children are heroes. It is normal that you see them as children. Don't believe what you see on the internet. This is in essence the message that Russian President Vladimir Putin conveyed to a group of mothers whose children are fighting in Ukraine. Ahead of Mother's Day this Sunday, Putin expressed his sympathy for those who have lost family members to the conflict.
I want you to know I personally and the entire leadership of the country share this pain. We understand that nothing can replace the loss.
But the grassroots group, the Council of Mothers and Wives, have accused Putin of handpicking the women he met and avoiding those who dare challenge him. Mothers like Olga, who now have a son serving in the military, have demanded the Kremlin makes good on its promise to adequately train conscripts on the front.
We've been here in Moscow now for several days. We're demanding and we're trying in every possible way to engage in dialogue with the authorities, but that hasn't yet happened.
And yet it's images like these that soothe the hearts of many mothers in Russia. This is the homecoming of a group of soldiers who were captured by the Ukrainian army and then exchanged for other prisoners. However, many Russian and Ukrainian mothers will never see their sons alive again. There are estimated to be tens of thousands dead on both sides already, with no sign that the war will end anytime soon.
France has taken a strong line against Italy at an EU Interior Minister's extraordinary meeting in Brussels. The French Interior Minister told the press that boats that rescue people in the Mediterranean Sea should be allowed dock and migrants should be allowed disembark in the nearest, safest place.
If Italy does not allow the boats to dock, it's not respecting the law of the sea and the principle of the nearest safe port. There is no reasons for the country acting relocations, France and Germany, to directly welcome the boats and migrants coming from Africa or Asia.
Other disagreements remain. Italy and 3 Mediterranean countries, Greece, Cyprus and Malta, labelled as disappointing the voluntary relocation mechanism for sharing asylum seekers set up by the French presidency last June. Their ministers asked not only for more solidarity, but also for an EU legal framework on search and rescue operations. The Italian government would like a code of conduct for NGOs. The European Commission is not against the idea.
I think that the issue is not off the table. We do have to work with NGOs, but in an orderly way, in a way that respects also our member states, in a way that structures search and rescue operations in a constructive method of operations. And if this requires a more structured framework, like a code of conduct, yes, we will support it.
Ministers also gave their feedback on the 20-point action plan for the central Mediterranean presented by the European Commission. It includes stronger cooperation with African countries. A similar plan will be forwarded for the Western Balkans migratory route that at the moment is a major issue of concern for several countries, as illegal entries increased by 168% compared to last year. Maeve McMahon, Euronews, Brussels.
Clashes erupted between migrants in a northern Serbian town on the border with Hungary, leading to one man being shot twice in the chest and wounded. Serbian sources say 600 people were detained after police were called to the scene following reports of migrants shooting at one another in the area. The number of people trying to reach Western Europe through the Balkans has surged in recent months. Migrants come to Serbia with the hope of crossing into neighbouring Hungary and Croatia, who are EU member states. Most come from Afghanistan and Syria, but there are arrivals from many other parts of Asia and Africa too. Hundreds are currently believed to be camping on Serbia's northern borders, using people smugglers to help to cross a wire fence and evade Hungarian police controls. With tensions already high and winter underway, people are getting increasingly desperate. In response, Serbian police say they have launched an operation to crack down on migrant smuggling in the area with the help of drones. Libya has sent over 200 migrants from neighbouring countries back to their homelands, in a rare display of cooperation from the country's divided institutions. The group was mainly made up of Egyptians and Chadians, with a smaller number of Sudanese, according to an official involved in the operation. Embassy staff from the people's home countries watched the process, with migrants given biscuits and water before the long journey. Announcing the move, a police spokesperson said that centres for detained migrants had become overwhelmed. Indeed, Libya is a massive conduit for illegal migration, with people mainly entering through the vast and largely unguarded Sahara Desert to the south before attempting to reach Europe. Due to rival administrations existing in the west and east of the country, government services and authority is patchy, making it an alluring place to operate for people smugglers.